Every year, Americans tell themselves the same thing. The Super Bowl is the biggest sporting event on Earth, the most watched broadcast in television history, the pinnacle of organized competition. And in America, they are right. But America is not the whole world. When you look at the actual numbers, the viewership, the economic impact, the cultural stakes, the historical weight, the comparison stops being close. It stops being close very quickly. Define the comparison clearly. We are comparing the Super Bowl, NFL championship, held annually, to the FIFA World Cup final, held every 4 years. Both are the endpoints of their respective competitions. Be upfront about what we are measuring, not athletic quality, not entertainment value for American audiences, not which sport is better. We are measuring size, global scale, cultural weight, economic impact, historical stakes. The American sports framework, leagues to playoffs, to championship to Super Bowl. The most successful domestic sports entertainment system ever built. The global sports framework, national teams to 3-year qualification across 211 countries to 32-team tournament to World Cup final. The most participated international competition in human history. One event tells an American story. The other tells the story of the entire human race. Both framings are legitimate. Only one is bigger. The viewership numbers. Super Bowl 2024, Kansas City Chiefs versus San Francisco 49ers, 123.7 million U.S. viewers. The most watched American television broadcast in history. World Cup Final 2022, Argentina versus France. Estimated 1.5 billion global viewers. More people than the combined populations of North America and South America. Total World Cup 2022. Cumulative viewership across the tournament, approximately 5 billion people. The global population is 8 billion. More than half of all living human beings watched some portion of the 2022 World Cup. The Super Bowl's audience outside the USA, approximately 30 to 50 million internationally. The practical reality. When the Super Bowl airs, most of the world is asleep, at work, or unaware it is happening. The economic scale, Super Bowl 2024 economic impact on Las Vegas, host city, $500 million to $1 billion. World Cup 2022 economic impact on Qatar, approximately $300 billion in infrastructure investment and hosting expenditure over 12 years. World Cup 2026 projected economic impact across USA, Canada, and Mexico, $5 to $14 billion. The comparison: the Super Bowl moves money within a single American city for a weekend. The World Cup restructures economies. The broadcast reality: the Super Bowl is broadcast in approximately 180 countries. Most of those international broadcasts air at times incompatible with mass viewing, 6:30 a.m. in Europe, midnight in East Asia, mid-morning in Africa. The World Cup Final is the event that international broadcasters build their entire scheduling calendar around. Advertising rates: $7 million per 30 seconds in the Super Bowl American market. World Cup advertising buys across 10 concurrent global markets simultaneously. The biggest difference: nations versus franchises. This is the comparison that numbers alone cannot fully communicate. When the Kansas City Chiefs win the Super Bowl, Kansas City celebrates. The Chiefs fan base celebrates. The rest of America respects it and moves on to the offseason. When Argentina won the World Cup in 2022, 45 million people gathered in streets, squares, and stadiums across an entire continent. Schools closed, flights were delayed, by celebrations on runways. The Argentine president gave a national address. Streets were gridlocked with joy for 3 days. When England won the World Cup in 1966, it defined a generation. When England lost the World Cup final in 1990 on penalties, the tears of Paul Gascoigne became one of the most reproduced images in British photography. When Brazil lost 7-1 to Germany on home soil in 2014, the country entered a period of genuine national grief. Psychologists published academic papers about the collective trauma. No Super Bowl defeat has ever been described as a national trauma, because franchises are not nations. A franchise loss hurts its fan base. A national loss at the World Cup touches everyone who holds that passport, including people who never watched a match. The every 4 years effect. The Super Bowl happens every year. If your team loses this February, you can be back next February. The World Cup happens every 4 years. A player in his prime gets 3 or 4 attempts in his entire career. Some players get fewer. Lionel Messi played 5 World Cups before winning at age 35. He played his first at 18. He waited 17 years. The scarcity creates a weight that no annual event can manufacture. 4 years of qualifying, 4 years of build-up, 4 years of a country's hopes, compressed into 90 minutes. A World Cup penalty miss does not just end a match. It ends a 4-year chapter of a player's career, a team's journey, a nation's hope. This is why professional footballers weep at World Cup defeats in ways that Super Bowl players rarely do. The calendar forces it. The underdog factor in the NFL money wins. The franchises with the highest payrolls, the best quarterbacks, and the best coaching staffs win most Super Bowls. The system rewards investment. This is a feature, not a flaw. At the World Cup, Saudi Arabia defeated Argentina 2-1 in 2022, the defending World Cup champions. Morocco reached the semifinal, the first African nation in history to do so. Iceland drew with Argentina in 2018, despite a population of 340,000 people. Iceland's entire population is smaller than the city of Tulsa, Oklahoma. They drew with Argentina at the World Cup in front of 1 billion people. There is no equivalent in the NFL. A 340,000-person franchise does not exist. A city of Tulsa's population cannot field a Super Bowl team. The possibility of the miracle is genuinely, structurally real at the World Cup, in a way it never can be in the NFL, the political and historical dimension, the 1969 football war. A World Cup qualifying match between El Salvador and Honduras escalated into a 100-hour military conflict. Football started the conversation that became a war. The 1978 Argentina World Cup. Held under a military dictatorship. International pressure to boycott. Matches played while political prisoners disappeared. 2022 Iran versus USA group stage. 2 countries with no diplomatic relations for 44 years. No embassy visits, no direct phone lines between governments. But 22 players from those 2 countries were required by the tournament structure to face each other on a football pitch while 1 billion people watched. Football players from Iran and America shook hands at the center circle of a pitch in Qatar. Governments could not manage what sport forced. No Super Bowl has ever produced a diplomatic moment. It has never needed to. Because the Super Bowl does not involve nations at war. What the Super Bowl does better, being honest. This comparison would be dishonest if it ignored what the Super Bowl genuinely does better. So here it is. Halftime show. The Super Bowl halftime show is the most watched single musical performance on Earth. No World Cup equivalent exists. It is a standalone cultural product that does not require football interest to enjoy. American domestic viewership. In the United States, the Super Bowl still outrates any World Cup match. This is currently true and will likely remain true for years. Scoring and entertainment pacing. NFL games guarantee action, scoring, and decisive resolution. Football's low-scoring format and possibility of draws frustrates audiences raised on points-heavy sports. Advertising culture. The Super Bowl created a one-of-a-kind advertising tradition. Brands spend millions producing 30-second films for a captive audience. This is genuinely impressive and exists nowhere else. Production scale. The NFL's production quality, cameras, replay technology, broadcast graphics, remains the global benchmark. If you are an American viewer, the Super Bowl delivers a better packaged entertainment experience. That is true and should be said. America's blind spot. The Super Bowl comparison reveals something specific about American sports culture. America built a perfect domestic sports system. So complete, so self-sufficient, so excellent that it rarely required looking outward. The NFL, the NBA, the MLB, the NHL, four major leagues that collectively occupy the American sports calendar year-round. All of them produce world-class competition. None of them involve the rest of the world. Most Americans can name 30 NFL players and struggle to name 5 international footballers. This is not ignorance in the negative sense. It is the natural result of having so much excellent domestic sport that looking outward was never necessary. The 2026 World Cup breaks this pattern. For the first time in a generation, the world's biggest event comes to America. The rest of the world arrives in your cities, in your stadiums, on your television channels. At 3 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon in a time zone that makes sense. The 2026 Moment, MetLife Stadium in New Jersey, will host the World Cup Final in July 2026. This is the same venue that hosted Super Bowl 48 in 2014. On the same grass where the NFL played its biggest game, 1.5 billion people will watch the world's biggest game. Americans in that stadium, many of them first-time football viewers, will be sitting inside the largest collective human experience on Earth. And for many of them, it will be the first time they understand why the rest of the world cares about this sport the way they care about the Super Bowl. The World Cup is bigger than the Super Bowl. The numbers make this case definitively: viewership, economic impact, global participation, cultural stakes, and historical weight. The Super Bowl is the greatest sports entertainment product ever created for the audience it was built for. That audience is America. That is not a small thing. The World Cup was built for everyone. When 1.5 billion people stop what they are doing at the same moment to watch 22 players on a pitch, that is not a sporting event in the conventional sense. It is the largest shared human experience that exists outside of war and natural disaster. And in the summer of 2026, that experience comes to America. The question is not whether you will watch. You will. The question is whether you will understand the scale of what you are inside when you do. Football Atlas was built for that moment. But if the World Cup is this enormous, why did it take America so long to notice? The answer is not simple. It involves immigration, infrastructure, investment, and a 30-year plan most people never saw coming. Next week, we are telling that story. How America went from football laughingstock, the country that invented a different sport and called it football, to the country hosting the biggest event in human history with a team that might actually win it. That video is next. Do not miss it.